How are you?
Good, how are you?
Got your speech ready?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the first meeting of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society in 2025. New year and exciting things lie ahead, I'm sure. My name is Jonathan Stair and I'm the president. I'm glad that you're all here today. I'm particularly glad to see our recording secretary, Richard Robinstein. He's had surgery. He's doing okay. Could like to be doing better. So just give him a word of encouragement and we wish you a speedy recovery, Richard. At our last meeting, if you remember, I had everybody sign in. I found out we don't necessarily have to have you sign in, but if you would like to stay on top of what the York County History Center is doing, there is a sheet up here. You can put your name and email address and they'll send you things. And they'll also include information about our programs throughout the year. But feel free to sign that if you want to. Is there anybody here who's not been here before? Looks like everybody's been here before, so welcome. What?
You have a gentleman right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm a first timer.
You want to tell us your name, where you're from, or what you're researching?
Steve Raffensperger, Lancaster County, the Raffenspergers that located here 1700s.
Okay. We met somewhere, didn't we? I'm trying to remember.
I was at one of these many years ago, but it's so long ago
Okay.
because I'm a first timer.
All right. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Because Richard's voice is still in recovery, I'm going to ask Margaret Berg to come and read the minutes from last meeting, and then she will also give us a treasurers and membership report.
Okay, the minutes. The meeting was called to order by the president, Jonathan Stair. First-time attendees, Dorothy Fabi and daughter Helen, were recognized. Jonathan read the minutes of the August meeting due to the absence of Secretary Richard Robinstein. The treasurer, Margaret Berg, reported there are 162 members and 9 new members for the 24-25 fiscal year. Adam Bentz reported for YCHC Library. There are some new volunteers. Jonathan reported about the society's table at the YCHC Oyster Festival and that one-year memberships will be given to 5 persons who entered the drawing. He also reported that publication 92 has been distributed. Richard Kunkel reported on programs. January 5th will be Show, Tell, and Ask. February 2nd will be Nisi DeShields Moulton speaking about the Hampton Plantation, and March 2nd will be about New Sweden. Richard introduced the program speaker, Darvin Martin, who spoke about Not Your Traditional Cemetery, research that he has done about Native American burials in York and Lancaster counties. Meeting was adjourned by President Stair. Treasurer's report for November and December 2024. Balance at October 31st, 2024, $19,085.26. There were no receipts for November. Receipts for December were membership renewals of $70. Disbursements in November were speaker fees for the Pennsylvania Heritage Foundation in September, or in August, that was, September, that was a visit to the archives in Harrisburg. And that was $125. For Darvin Martin, for the November meeting was $161.96. York County History Center, we purchased archival materials for the library, and that was $816.03. Mastoff Press to print and mail the special publication 92 was $791.18. And a gift basket from Round Orchards for Richard was $64.61. Total disbursements for November was $1,958.78. There were no disbursements for December. The balance in the trust bank operating account as of December 31st, 2024 is $17,196.48. Membership At the end of December, 166 members. We've had one renewal in that number. For the year, the fiscal year 2024-25, we have 17 new members. We have 5 of the previous year memberships that have not renewed. Any questions? Got it.
Thank you, Margaret.
Mhm.
Nicole, anything from the library?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Great to see you this afternoon. Just a couple announcements about the History Center. This webinar is being recorded as well as offered on Zoom today. All of our programs are available after today on YouTube, on the York County History Center YouTube channel. A couple of programs coming up. On January 14th, we have a new program called Agricultural York. It's a panel of Penn State Extension educators talking about agricultural life in York County today and in the past. January 15th is our Civil War Roundtable program. Speaker is Ron Kirkwood, and he'll be speaking about his new book about Spangler Farm in Gettysburg. Our January 22nd is our All Vets program. The speaker is Robin Fisher, who is a Vietnam vet. And on January 29th, Elizabeth Reese will be speaking about Lafayette's Grand Tour. This will be a webinar about Lafayette's tour, including his time in York in 1824. If you'd like more information, please sign up for our email list and visit yorkhistorycenter.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Before I have Richard come and talk about future programs, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our officers. Over the past couple of weeks, I've realized how grateful and thankful I am for all the work they do. And I would wonder, I'm going to call your names out and ask you to stand, so everyone knows who you are. Our Vice President is Richard Kunkel. He's responsible for our programs. Our recording secretary is Richard Robinstein, who takes the minutes. We have Secretary Treasurer, you heard from Margaret Burr. And let me just say, Margaret has done a lot of things for me. And so Margaret, I very much appreciate all the work you've done for me.
You're very welcome.
Our Director of Research is Becky Anstein. Do I have your title correct? Corresponding Secretary.
Yeah.
So stand up, Becky, so everybody can see you. And one of our at-large board members is Jason Miller. And of course, Nicole is on the board as a representative of the York County History Center. We also have Tom Gibson, who's a member at large, who is helping with the Twinning Association. I think somebody ran into him earlier today. Oh, Mike ran into him earlier today.
He did say he's on the way over.
Yeah, he said he'd come later this afternoon. And our webmaster is Lynn Nelson, who has some other commitments this afternoon.
You
So-
forgot somebody.
Erica. I think you guys remember everybody.
And I should have written the names down. I thought I remembered. And Erica Runkles, who is our Director of Publications. She edits the newsletter, puts it together, and she also is overseeing our special publications. So I'm very grateful for her. I think she's doing a great job with the newsletter and helps us stay on track. So thank you. And I apologize, Erica. I'm very grateful for all these people. You know, things don't happen just because we wish they would. It's because of the hard work of all these officers that we have, what we have in our society. And as you heard, we have 166 members. Our membership is increasing, which I think speaks to the fact that we're offering something that people want. Before I turn over to Richard, anything else anybody would like to share about what's going on in the genealogy community? Any historical notes or anything? If not, well, you can bring that up too when we have our show and tell. So Richard, if you want to come and tell us about future programs, and then I'll let you moderate the session from here.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I wish to wish everyone a happy new year, and today's the 12th day of Christmas, and for a number of years now, I've made homemade mincemeat. There's a homemade mincemeat pie here, so anyone who wishes to partake of the mincemeat pie can do so after we have our meeting. So and I just baked it yesterday, so it's fresh. Okay, so future programs before we launch into today's program. Next month will be Nisi DeShields Moulton, and she's going to give a presentation about the connections between the York community and the Hampton plantation of the Ridgely family, which is located near present-day Towson, Maryland. It's actually on the National Register of Historic Sites. You can go and visit the plantation, but many York families, African-American families, York County families have connections. They were enslaved persons at the Hampton plantation. March, yours truly will be the speaker, and it will be on the history and genealogy of New Sweden. And some of you may have never in your life heard of New Sweden. Actually, the Swedes were the very first European settlers to be within what is now the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as well as Delaware and parts of New Jersey. So very early date in the 1630s, late 1630s and 1640s. And then New Sweden was conquered by the Dutch and then eventually the English. But the settlers that came there in the Philadelphia area, the Wilmington area, remained. And there's some connections even with York County. So I will tie those in as well. Some of you may have Swedish ancestry and you don't even know it. I didn't know it for a long time. I have some Swedish ancestry from that colony. In April, we were lucky to have Tyler Stump. He will speak, is it Fairview? It's Farview. Okay, but you're far out if you're really criminally insane. I'll try to remember that. So the Farview State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, that will be his presentation. Those records from these state hospitals are at the Pennsylvania State Archives in Harrisburg, and Tyler has made a study of this particular hospital, which actually going to have some cases of people from South Central Pennsylvania who ended up there as well. Hopefully not your close relatives, but you never know. May was going to be off-site. We are going to be visiting the new facility, I guess it's a year or so old now, of the Adams County Historical Society in Gettysburg. And they're going to give us a tour of the museum as well as in their library archives with some telling us what resources they have there as well. So everyone's welcome to come. Should be an interesting place. It's got very high marks on their facility, their new place that for years and years, of course, Dr. Charles Gladfelder, who many of you know of, he was the director of the Adams County Historical Society. He's also a professor of history and a dean at one time at Gettysburg College. He was from York County, and he did a really great job with their library and so forth for a long time. It's a great historian. And right now I haven't verified it yet for June, but I think I have a program lined up, so I won't tell you what it is in case it falls through, but I hope to have news about it very shortly. So today is always kind of interesting because we don't know who's going to present or what they're going to present and how we want to do this. We have a number of people here who want to present. Do we want to do it alphabetical by last name or something? Who wants to go first? Okay. You're up.
Thank you.
4.
Happy New Year to everybody, and thank you to the board and every member, including Erica. Since you weren't first mentioned, I'll mention you again. My name's Mike Staub, and I've been a longtime member, and I'll begin by saying those of us, or all of us with genealogy, love history, obviously, and get very excited when we find some golden treasure, whether it be a book about an ancestor, an artifact, or even a house, or possibly are able to trace our line back further suddenly when we weren't able to all that's exciting. I look at it as a detective story. One of the things that you know when you get married is, and I was a genealogist a long time before I got married, that now suddenly you double your work. And that's a good thing. And also when your kids get married, then you have more that you can research for family. So back in 1984, when I got married, dating myself a little bit, I apologize. I knew already that my wife was related to a family known as, the English name is Leber, Leber. I'm sorry, Leber. It's hard for me to say because my wife speaks German and lived in Germany. So she says I should pronounce Leber as labor. Whether it's Leber or labor, I want to talk to you a little bit about that family. So and we all know the Sunday news. On October 21st, 1984, about 6 months after I got married, I was, reading in the newspaper, and it said, I know a story, the little log cabin. It was by Bertha Abel, I'm going to say Labor now. I know a story about a German immigrant and a little log cabin. This little log cabin sits in the meadow by the stream and was once the home of 10 children. Jacob Labor came to America on the ship Dragon with George Spencer as the master of the ship. It sailed from Rotterdam, later from Deal, England, and Jacob took an oath, his oath here on September 26, 1749, at the courthouse in Philadelphia. In 1753, Jacob was granted 117 acres of land by William Penn. And this land is located from between Yorkana and Mount Pisgah. The log, and I have a question, because from what I know of William Penn, I don't think he had land back in 1753 then, but.
He was dead.
Yeah, this would have been his descendants. Yes, because it was 1680, I think, when. So it would be his descendants. The log cabin, I was told, was by an authorized man, is pre-revolution, around 1760. The cabin had a large fireplace on one side and a never-failing spring of water by the front of the cabin. The water from the spring runs under the cabin, so as you know, that was their refrigerator. The cabin in later years was used as a spring house to keep the farmers' milk and food. It was also used as a wash house to do the family washing, and then a butcher shop to do the farm butchering. The spring still is used by the farm for their water. Jacob and Anna Marie Labor were the parents of 10 children. And then it goes on to say the cabin is deteriorating at that point. So I'm reading about this and I'm thinking, well, I'd like to go see it. So I'm going to start passing some things around. That's the article. So this is 1984. I got to meet Bertha, and I got to go out and see the cabin, and it was indeed deteriorating, obviously from the 1700s. And being dedicated to history and genealogy, I thought, what can we do about this? Well, it took me about 4 years, and many of you are probably knowledgeable of Historic York Incorporated that did save homes. And I was pointed in that direction, possibly by someone, because I was a member back then, in South Central Pennsylvania Genealogy. So I contacted them and I talked to a man, Brian Van Sweden was his name. And he said, he explained what the deal was. They would save it by taking it down. No cost to me or to the family. And they would then store it in their warehouse, and this is what they did with a lot of homes and also items from homes. And then if someone wanted to buy it, they'd have to buy it as the complete home and then erect it where they wanted to. Of course, they are the ones that are paying money. At the time, that was the only way I could see it, so say, the farmer was going to take it down. So that is in fact what happened this was 1988. This next article I'll show you is other pictures of the log cabin. And one of the relatives, Horace Throne, who I knew very well, and it talks about historic York. Then lastly, Jacob Labor, the owner, the original owner, there was a book in our library. So if you have any Stein, Stein, which is married in family, my mother-in-law is a Stein, and Labor, Leber. This book, I make copies of it, and it's called Descendants of Jacob Labor. And actually on page 3 and 4 of this, you'll see further article about the log cabin that was saved. And as Nicole knows, I showed her the book that we have it down in our historical society along with many addendums by Douglas Labor. And you may want to look at that for maybe your ancestors or further interest of the history of this. So that's my presentation. And thank you all for listening.
Question.
Who wishes to go next?
I can do it.
You're up.
Did it turn off?
Went to sleep too deeply.
Yeah.
That one. This one.
Well, as many of you know, I've been involved with studying and researching and promoting camp security here in York County for many years. And last year I decided to start a database of the guards who were at camp security, because initially many of the guards, initially the guards were from York County militia. And of course, those people would be people who lived here in the county during the Revolutionary War. Now, if you're not familiar with camp security was a Revolutionary War prison encampment that housed British privates and non-commissioned officers captured at the battles of Saratoga and Yorktown. It was opened at the end of July, beginning of August of 1781, and it closed with the end of the war in May of 1783. Located out in Springett's Ferry Township, And you can see here where that red star is where the camp was located. So this would be East Market Street here, Locust Grove Road here, and then this is East Prospect Road out here. One of the sources that we have to document camp security is Roger Lamb's account, which he published in the early 19th century. And a couple of years ago, we were fortunate to be provided his sketchbook, his book in which he wrote things, including a draft of one of his books. And he also included what are stylized pictures of camp security, the stockade, and then outside the stockade was a less guarded village site. Now, as you can see, these guys have sort of Napoleonic uniforms, so it's not from the road. I mean, he's not drawing this from, this is not an actual representation. I always tell people just a stylized representation. Gives you some idea of what he was thinking about. Now, there were 3 sets of guards at camp security initially. To construct the camp and to guard it was the York County Militia from July of 1781, and they were continued until January of 1782. There were some militiamen who were out there later in 1782, but most of the responsibility for the guarding of the camp was transferred to the Continental Army in late January of 1782. Starting in January of 1782 through October of 1782, there was a Continental Army unit that was a guard called Congress's Own. It was one of the few regiments in the Continental Army. It was funded by Congress rather than by the states. That's why it was called Congress's Own. And they also felt they were the poor stepchild of the Continental Army because Congress was, like today, not quite that willing to put their money where their mouth was. So there was always pay problems with this unit. It was under the command of Colonel Moses Hazen, and initially he was recruiting people who had tried to either go to Canada or escape from Canada, called the 2nd Canadian Regiment, although he eventually took anybody he could get. In fact, I think there were some York Countyans that were in his regiment by the end of the war. He was recalled away from York at the end of October 1782, and starting October 31st was a regiment under the command of Colonel Richard Butler. He was there from November, excuse me. He was there from November of 1782 until the end of the war, May of 1783. Colonel Richard Butler had been a colonel in a Continental Army unit. And as you know, the Continental Army was reorganized, I think, in 1780 or 81. And eventually he was sent to Carlisle to raise more troops. And he was recruiting in Carlisle. I'm not sure how large his regiment was. I can't really find many records about this because once the Battle of Yorktown occurred, they weren't quite as concerned about keeping the Continental Army up to strength. And so there's very little information about this regiment, but hopefully we'll learn more about that as we go along. So what are the sources for my database? Well, for the York County Militia, the State Archives has a lot of stuff, and here is a chart which I believe Henry James Young put together, as many of you know Henry James Young, put together of the militia units that were at camp security. And you'll see he says that they started on July the 8th, although it seems most likely that they did not, the militia did not start a lot of work out at the site of camp security until much later, at the end of July. And you'll see, oops. Just want to point out, he gives the class numbers, and that'll be important. It's a little important to me now. It's going to be more important in the future because the militia was called out by class, not by battalion or by company, and therefore, when we know the class number, we know what order these people are being called out in, and sort of where they're coming from. This is a letter that was sent from William Scott, who was the county lieutenant of York County for the militia, to President Reed, who was president of the Supreme Executive Council on July 28, 1781. He says, that I have called the fourth class. So here we see, you saw that fourth class earlier. You can see the fourth class over here. So he says, I have called the fourth class of the militia, who have furnished upwards of 100 men. Colonel Wood, now Colonel Wood was an Army officer in charge of the prisoners, is of the opinion we require near double that number until the necessary works on the encampment are erected. And here we begin to get into some of the actual records of the militia. This is one of the earliest, as far as time, you see some of these guys attribute their beginning of service to July the 8th. But these are the commanding officers. I suspect they were starting to put the administration in place before they actually did work at the site. John Scott was called as an express to warn the militia for guards. And that was on July 26th. This is probably about the time that most of the militia started service out at Camp Security. Many of the records that we have are these pay chits that were done either at the end of the person's service or after the war, where they were getting pay for their service. And you'll see that these mention the class. And this one was actually signed out at Camp Security. Many of these records have been transcribed and published in the Pennsylvania Archives, particularly the 6th series, volume 2, and that's where I started. So the database as it stands now only includes information from this volume. I'm just going to start getting into the original records, hopefully next week. So if you want to see these things, you see the information anyways, you can go to any website that has the published Pennsylvania Archives on it. June Lloyd, who was a librarian here at the York County History Center, has gone through the Revolutionary War pensions and looked for ones of individuals who were Camp Security. And so she has extracted some of these things that you see here. I will be putting her data set into my database as well. That's the militia. For Hazen's Regiment, Congress's Own, we do have some records that were kept. This is a return from a collection up in the SUNY, New York at Plattsburgh. SUNY at Plattsburgh. And you'll see it talks about the Canadian Old Regiment here. Then Colonel Richard Butler's Pennsylvania Regiment. I have found no list of names yet, although we did find a journal from one of Hazen's officers where he talks about that Hazen's unit was being recalled from Camp Security, and he says on October 29th, this day, Colonel Butler, with the rest of the body of Pennsylvania line under his command, arrived here and was lodged in the Continental storehouses. So this is how we know exactly when the guards transitioned from Hazen's regiment to Butler's unit. So that leads us to the guard database. And let's see if I can do this right.
It looks like it's on the screen.
What? It's on here. I think I know what to do. Just get out of the presentation. There we go. Whoa. Oh, there we go. Now, I'm hoping that this database eventually will be on the website of the Friends of Camp Security. But and it's in a spreadsheet, so you can sort it any way you want to. And I designed it this way so that people who have various interests can sort it in different ways. Of course, as genealogists, we're primarily interested in names, so right now I have it sorted alphabetically by surname and then first name. But let's say you wanted to find out, when a particular company was there, you could sort it by company and start date of service. Or if you wanted to find out how many men were there at a particular time, you could sort it by start date of service. I'll just go through the fields I've selected. This ID number, I'm giving each entry a unique ID number so that if I find multiple records for the same person, and I'm sure it's the same person, I can put cross references into the various entries. So I'm creating a separate entry for each time the person's name shows up in a different record. Which means that you'll see, I'm going to use Robinstein as an example. You'll see that we get the Robinsteins. There are a couple entries for the same person. But so I have surname, first name, rank, and then unit. And this will be whether it's York County Militia, Hazen's Regiment, or Butler's Regiment. Class, so that's the class that would be for the militia. Company name, because the militia units were identified primarily by class and by company commander. They were not identified by battalion or company because the militia was reorganized, the units were reorganized when they became active duty, such as guarding prisoners. Then a start date of service, end date of service, months of service. Many times the militia records will tell you if they were there for 2 months, but it won't tell you when they started or ended service. So I'm trying to get an idea, how long were people there? Place of residence. Now this will be, I have some of now, this will come up other records such as the pensions. That way, if you're looking for an ancestor and you know where they lived, you can, and you want to make sure it's the right person, you can check that out. Birth date, death date, if I can find it, wife's name. This will particularly come up with pensions. Again, for genealogists, the source. And then I have the date of the source. Now, why do I have the date of the source? Because as we as genealogists know, the closer a record is to the date of the event, the more accurate it's likely to be. So what happens if this date is 20 or 30 years after the date of service? Well, there might be some question as to the accuracy of the service information. And then cross-reference, that's the field where I put that cross-reference number, and then notes. And you can see I've different things that I take from the documents. This is designed to be added to. So once I'm done with it, which hopefully will be this 2025, once I'm done with it, as people send us information, I want to add it to this database. Or I don't know if you'll be able to add it on the website, but you can at least provide information. We can update it ourselves. Now I just want to go down here to the Robinsteins. Let's see here. Richard, you have to tell me when you see it.
Okay, you mean, but I could just go into the first page,
This is RA.
Noel or Leonard.
Keep going.
They've been pushing their name.
Wait, there's one of them.
Yeah, there's three of them,
That Leonard,
four of them.
and there's Leonard up there, and there's DeWalt. So this is information that came out of the published archives. So if we take Leonard, for instance, and I'm not sure why, well, because the surnames are spelled differently. I kept the spellings of the surnames as they appear in the records. As time goes on, if we can confirm that this Leonard up here is the same as this Leonard down here, then we'll put a cross-reference in that column. We just go across here. And so here we know that this Leonard was guarding prisoners at Camp Security in the months of November and December 1781.
I think I missed one or two in the wall.
Maybe you should go up.
Doesn't even
That would
spell.
be- Yeah, wait,
I'm in the P's
there's
now,
a
right?
David, what's that? Moving around there,
Yeah,
Well, there's a DeWalt.
yeah,
Oh,
but
that's
it's also
the same guy.
David, he was under the command of Moore. So that one we just had, or not,
yeah, it's up, you're off of it now.
a little higher.
What are we looking at?
There was one that was higher.
Yeah, look,
Oh, yeah, Dave, I saw that,
right
right
here.
here,
Yep,
yeah.
she served twice with the half security. And I knew Leonard that served at least once, I don't remember exactly.
Well, here's Leonard, see that, these are two different records, but in this case, Leonard's there, October tenth, 1781, October 10th, 1781. So this is probably the same well, here's another one. So that's the three entries for the same person. Um. I wanted to see if I can find something over here. If a person, now for instance here, if the person was a substitute for somebody else, I put that in there as well. So a lot of times, people will have this person, Joseph Walker, as the guard. He wasn't actually the guard. He was, he got somebody else to substitute for him. And then, see if I can find the entry that I want to show you. Here. There are a number of these that say, put up his part of the stockade, which is very intriguing to me because now we know that the guards were actually involved in constructing the stockade. And in some cases, these men, the typical length of service for militia was 2 months. In some cases, these men did not serve a full two months. So I'm wondering if when they completed their part of the stockade, they were discharged early. I don't know. There's a lot of things that this database is going to raise questions. About. And if the document shows it, so in this case, we know that this McGinley was son of John McGinley. So if there is a reference to parents or children, so in some cases after the war, a father got to pay for his son because the son may have moved and told his dad, you know, go get the money for me, or a son may have gotten to pay for his father because his father was too old, and so he and they're mentioned, that relationship is mentioned in these records.
Or someone else picked up the pasture like they did with the law. So, and that was in this name. And I have the pasture records of him going to burn the fort record, saying that he did serve three against them. Years of stuff in there too.
Then I'll show you my big disappointment here. See if I can find it.
That's what we mean.
No, it's John Steyer here. Is that Steyer or is it Steyer?
Steyer.
Yeah, it's Steyer. So last year I determined that the assumption I'd made about my immigrant ancestor was wrong because I'd misread the original record, which was written in German. And I started doing some research and I picked up this John Steyer. I'm pretty sure my earliest references to my family are in Loudoun County, Virginia, but they married into a family from around the Hanover area by the Badefeld. Badefeld was the last name, and they were from that initially from the Hanover area, and then moved down to Loudoun County, Virginia, also. And so I thought, well, they must have known each other somewhere before that. Maybe my ancestor got married here in York County. And I found this John Steyer. I was all excited, and I even found out that this John Steyer has a pension. I thought, well, that's really good. I'm going to find out for sure now whether he's not whether or not he's my ancestor. Well, it turns out his full name was John Conrad Steyer. His father was John Conrad Steyer, but to separate the two, they called the father Conrad and the son John. This John eventually moved to Western Maryland, and he reverted, I guess because he was away from his father, he reverted back to Conrad as his first name. And when I looked at his pension record, it was obvious that this man could not be my ancestor, and so my face dropped, and I started crying. Because I was really hoping I could find my immigrant ancestor, which is my goal for 2025. So that was my disappointment, but this has been a lot of fun. Until the database is available on the Forensic Camp Security website, if anybody has ancestors there and you want me to provide information from it, just contact me. I'll be glad to give you what I have so far. And if you have stuff to add to it, please let me know, because I want to make this as expansive as possible. And we're talking about putting another spreadsheet on the website where people who can identify one of these individuals as their ancestor can put their name with that. So that we would know, descendants of some of these guards. So
I just saw one,
what's that?
Zachariah Shoe.
Shoe, yes. I probably can't find it.
There it is. Spelled SHEW.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
That's him. Say anything out across or no?
Probably not, because you see that it's not expanded, but we can look across and see.
Yeah.
No, not that one. No, there might be under some other spelling.
That around the time they opened it up.
Well, he would have been probably in the second contingent, because the first contingent was there from basically the end of July until from the August and September. And then this would be like the second group of militiamen that were there, October to December. Yes, Jason.
Again, I don't know this topic very well, so I'm just, the York County militia would be mostly or all York County residents or?
To be a part of the militia at that time, they would have had to live in York County at the time. The militia always drew from the county of residence. So, and I love this when you go in the DAR and they have somebody serving in the, say, the York County militia who lived in Chester County. That didn't happen. And trust me, militia service was not popular in Pennsylvania. I mean, it was basically a draft. And my favorite, I didn't bring my favorite document along, but I have a document from Lancaster County. I think it was in the late 1770s. They wanted to get a militia guard to guard supplies going from Lebanon, which was part of Lancaster County at the time, down to Philadelphia. Not a single militiaman turned out to guard the supplies. So the militia officers in Lancaster County went out and they actually went on the labor market and hired people. That they found some people who would be willing to be paid to guard the supplies going from Lebanon down to Philadelphia. And I think it was George Washington who said at one point, less than half the York County militia ever turned out for duty. But you have to keep in mind, this is an agricultural time. And people want to leave their farms, they don't want to leave their livelihoods to go do stuff, and particularly 2 months. I mean, 2 months could be a long time if you're in planting or harvesting time, at that time. So,
Jonathan,
yes.
a couple quick questions. So I remember on the camp security site, there is a list of names
Yes,
that I think was guards, it's not
Yes.
prisoners. Is this expanding? That
Yes.
is, like there are more
yes,
people here?
yes. What's on the camp security website now, it is a copy of, well, it's actually a transcription of some of the lists that were in the Pennsylvania archives. And that's where I started. Now, this will duplicate that, but I'm also adding other stuff which is not on our website now.
That's
So,
great. And is just, these are real quick questions.
Yeah.
What weren't they picked that site because of the closeness to Price Creek? Am I correct? How far away is Price Creek?
well, the Kreitz, there's a branch of Kreitz Creek which runs on the north end of the site. The main reason they picked that site, one of the reasons I think was the person that owned it at the time of the Revolutionary War was a non-juror, which means they did not take an oath of allegiance to Pennsylvania. And I think they felt they had more pressure
That's right, I remember.
to open it up. Plus, they wanted to stay relatively close to the Susquehanna River because if you know, and you probably don't remember this much about the history, but in 1781, the British it was their southern campaign. and they're coming up through the Carolinas into Virginia. And the Americans were going crazy because they thought that the British Army most of the British prisoners were down at Charlottesville, Virginia. They thought the British would capture that prison and add all those prisoners to their ranks. And but they weren't sure how the British were going to move north. They didn't know whether they were going to move by land up on the west side of Susquehanna, or whether they would maybe come up through the Chesapeake Bay and come up on the east side of Susquehanna River. So they wanted to keep the prisoners pretty close to Susquehanna River, so they could put them on either side of the river depending on which way the British came. And there's a document which talks about that they should be there. Plus, the main center for prisoner administration in Pennsylvania was at Lancaster. And they didn't want to be too far from Lancaster. In fact, there are accounts where officers from Lancaster were coming over to do business on behalf of the prisoners in York. And they normally sent the supplies to Lancaster for York, and then they would disperse them to Reading. And they had another big camp at Reading, and then one here in York.
And last quick question.
Yes.
Is there showing the neighbors, anywhere, the surrounding farms?
Well, there's the manor.
I'm pretty sure that I have ancestors that have.
Yeah.
Surrounding farms.
Well, you're familiar with the manor map, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Shrewsbury.
Yeah, well, the one that the History Center has, I don't know if it's used to be on display, but
Oh, that's the coach one.
the big, yeah,
It's like 8 to 10.
yeah. But that's still showing some of the original,
I didn't know if Hively's,
yes,
would show that.
yes.
Yeah.
Neil Hively would show the original warrant tracks.
And it was to coach.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention, somebody sneaked in late, is Ben Weekly here, Ben Workley. Ben just completed a project for his digital public history class at your college. He did a website on camp security, and he took a lot of stuff that we had, and he's really interested in the human side, the human stories. So guards are one of his pages, the prisoners, some individuals. He's also interested in women and things like that. So Ben and I have been exchanging information, but Ben's pushing us in a whole new direction. I mean, not that we didn't want to go there before, but we haven't made that push so much. So hopefully at some point in the future, we may incorporate some of Ben's stuff in our website, or we might have a connection there. But if you want, Ben's been doing a lot of work on, who these people are and what were they doing, what were their background, and also he's interested in, what were the wives doing, what were the children doing. The prisoners, some of the prisoners had their wives and families with them, so that opens up a whole new area of research. So, okay. I think I've taken enough time here. Who's next?
Oh, good. All right, you go. A4B.
AB4B.
Anybody else need the laptop? No. Okay. I'm gonna shut it down then.
Nothing at all to do with databases, genealogy research, but the things that we run across that bring back childhood memories. This has been my bank for several years. I drop all my loose change into it. I did take that out to bring in today because it gets heavy. But the significance of it is the front. This little lock box that has 233 on it. One of my responsibilities, and this is dating me, as a child, was to walk to the post office every morning or at some point during the day and get the mail out of the box. It came in a box like this. And of course, in the old post office in New Freedom, all these boxes were lined up. This one caught my eye at a craft show because it says 233. It was our box number. When I went down from 3rd Street and eventually became our house number, 233 North 3rd Street. So when I saw it, I couldn't resist it, but it's a nice show and tell memory.
Well, I'm gonna take you out of York County. I think probably one of the few people that comes from California, and my ancestors are Croatian and French and German. So a little bit of the German York County here. The other night I was looking on Ancestry and got a very big surprise that a cousin had put on. My great-grandfather left France in 1848, and he went, kind of disappears, appears in Cuba, and I think some part of the West Indies, also, in the early 60s, I'm sorry. And he then marries in Cuba a lady by the name of Matilda Godpaye, which was also from France. And his name is Eugene Bouillon. They leave Cuba, go to New Orleans. He becomes a shirt maker in New Orleans. And his son becomes a shirt maker and a upholsterer and a curtain maker, a drapery maker. And then the next son also, and it follows on down. Lots of material sewing. The thing I find on Ancestry is Eugene Bouillon got a patent. Now, one of the things that I remember my grandfather talking about was how his father made little tucks on the shirts that men wore in New Orleans in those days. And with the material, and they make little tucks. The Seinfeld puffy shirt episode always reminded me of that thing that my grandfather told me. So the patent that Eugene applied for is a tucking accessory, attaches to sewing machines and helps the person who is doing the tucking. And just to let you know what a tucking is, the patent office has a 3-page. Well, this one's the 1 page that I just copied for just the beginning, but it's a big long explanation you have to do to get a patent. Okay, so be it known that I, Eugene Bouillon, a citizen of the United States residing at New Orleans in the parish of Orleans and the state of Louisiana, have invented certain new and useful improvements in tucking attachments for sewing machines, which is following is a description. The invention relates to a device which is capable of being used upon any sewing machine and of being readily adjusted to form tucks in uniform or varying sizes. And over the years, I remember my father, who also went into the upholstery business, making with the material that he would put on furniture around the edges, this tucking. And this was apparently with using the tucking attachment that they had at that time. So, and this was just a very big surprise to find that I had a grandfather in the year that he did 1874, who got a patent for his tucking attachment.
How did you come upon that?
A cousin had found it and posted it on Eugene's Ancestry list that she had on the family tree. Yeah.
And do you know why he left France?
He didn't want to go to war. Yeah, he didn't want to be in the military, and so he left through Switzerland. And we don't find him anywhere from 1848 until 1870 or 1868, when he marries my great grandmother in Cuba. And we're not sure where he was in between. The family history is that he was on the ship, that he was on ships that were going between France and that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Was he a part of any revolutionary activities in France? You know, I mean, was that
That was the reason pretty much why we figured he left, yeah, because that was what was going on. Richard has helped me so much with the history in France and who was taken over and when and how many changes they made in that. And that's when he left. And then they left Cuba because of the revolution that was going on there in the 1860s, I think it was. That's why they left Cuba and came to Louisiana. That's what and then they worked in department stores. He did a lot of shirt making, did department stores, and then they also had a mattress factory at some point, because there was an article in one of the New Orleans newspapers about a fire at the mattress factory. And the thing that got me about this too was that when I was in 7th grade and took home economics, I hated sewing. I hated every minute of it. And now I spend my whole retirement life in my sewing room making quilts and, so it did carry down through, but it took me a while to get there.
There, who's next? Anyone on that side of the room?
Well, I made the trip to get here.
Good, thank you. Glad you did.
I'm Steve Raffensperger. I know it's a York County name. I'm looking for my European roots, and nobody seems to know. Unfortunately for my immigrant ancestor, the village of origin's unknown. The spelling may have been anglicized. Dates of birth and death are unknown. I know he's here in 1749. There are Raffenspergers with a P in Hungary, and I got one of them to take the Y DNA test. And I got a Roethlisberger in Germany to take the Y DNA test. They are closer to each other than to me. So that went nowhere. So if all my advances through this process have been made through people who know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So that's why I'm here. If anybody has any insight into the Raffensperger clan of Eastern York Adams, please talk to me.
There's some in Dover. I went to school with her. I knew some rabbits. They were in Dover.
Yes, a branch of the family went to Dover and then on north,
Okay.
Perry County.
There were some down the southern part of York County too.
Yes, that's actually my part of my line, Martin, Philip, and that clan down there around Seven Valleys.
Yeah,
maybe.
Seven Valleys, Glen Rock.
Yeah,
Or were they Lutheran or Reformed?
originally reformed.
Okay, well, that narrows it down.
That helps a little.
That's a lie.
So I've made progress, but for an unusual name, I can't jump the pond, and that's the frustrating part. I've located family Bible.
Search.
Yeah, I've located family Bible, those pages.
We looked a lot on family search.
Oh, yeah, I did a consultation with Family History Library.
Well, I think you need to get into some records, if there's any kind of references, you sort of do a map, put pins in it wherever they might be found.
I talked to Andrea Benschneider's Beyond History, the German.
Well, but you need to probably, here, this is a branch library for the LDS. And if they have the original records of these towns, you can come look at them here.
Yeah, see, I need some town names. That's what I need.
Well, but on family search, if you do sort of in-depth searches, like the old International Genealogical Index or whatever, sometimes you'll find one reference to somebody, it's not your ancestor, but it'll give you names of towns. And you'll see where they're found. And that just because that record's there, but your ancestor's not, doesn't mean they're not in that town.
Because I did the Roethlisberger family history in German and got a leap to Gmunden, Austria. And I have a list on every variation of Raffensperger, Roethlisberger that you can imagine.
Related to the Secretary of State in Georgia or.
Oh, yeah, Brad, he's my cousin. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So when I got married many years ago, my mother-in-law wanted me to help her find her
her grandmother who came over from Germany, so she said. And she was a member of the Ellis Island Fund because she said her grandmother came over from Germany to New York. So I started researching and couldn't find anything for many years. And I said, are you sure she didn't come in somewhere else? And she said, no. So after a long time, I did find her. She came into Baltimore. And she was like, she didn't believe me. She did. She didn't come from Germany. She came from Hungary. And she was like, no, she didn't. And I said, yes, she did. And I said, she was like, how do you know? And I said, well, where was she going? And she said, to West Newton, which was near Pittsburgh. I said, it says that on the manifest. I said, was there anything special about her? And I knew that she had been, as a child, she had had her hip dislocated and had never healed, so she limped really badly. And on the manifest, it said that she had a hip joint affliction. So when I showed her that, she finally believed me. So she did come into Baltimore, and she was from Dobšinia, Hungary, which is now in Slovakia, excuse me. So I was able to find records, but I wasn't able to read them because a lot of them were in Latin and a lot of them were in German. So I hired a genealogist to help me. And I found out that 3 generations of her family lived in Hungary. They came from Germany and went to Hungary, and they lived in a German community where they actually were taught German and worked in their own special town. They were ore mining and shoemaking there. They intermarried with many of the local people. So when they did finally do their DNA, when I convinced my mother-in-law, she was a great bit Russian and Hungarian and German. And they did finally come from Germany, but in the late 1600s, early 1700s. And they did migrate then to Hungary. So that was very interesting, and it was kind of eye-opening for them. So that was mine.
What was the maiden name?
Pascala,
How spelled?
Kascala.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got someone else?
I have a short one here.
Okay.
Want to do this? I just came from the York Twinning Association, and we were doing a talk on some of York's most prominent citizens. And I'll ask our local attorney here, do you recognize the name Charles Barnett? Yes, I figured you would. Who was he?
I think he's the son of Jacob Barnett, who was the clerk of everything. He was the depositary, the clerk of courts, the register of wills, the recorder of deeds.
Okay, and he kept going and became a Pennsylvania senator and a United.
Well, Barnett's did,
Barnett,
not
yeah.
Jacob.
Oh, yes,
Jacob
right,
was
yeah.
in the
Yeah,
revolution,
yeah.
and he walked
Right,
into
yep.
Keynes, and he was the one that did everything. But Charles Barnett owned the Springdale estate,
That's,
which is where the.
that's exactly where we're going here. That's where
Unitarian churches.
I just
today.
came from there.
Yeah, they
And
tore the
we're
house
doing a
down.
talk, he built it, and something really interesting about that entire estate was he was over in Scotland and learned golf, and he brought back and built the first private golf course in the Western Hemisphere, right here in York, which is why York is sort of known that York is the golf capital of the Northeast. And the reason is because of Charles Barnett. And he built it. If any of you live in Springdale, that was all his golf course.
Oh, I think where your college campus is.
The last 2 holes were on the York College campus, and
Famous original.
they
country
liked
club
it.
before.
So many people wanted to play his golf course. He and 4 other men got together and they built the York Country Club, which was on the York College campus. They outgrew the 9-hole golf course, moved up to where they are now,
That became the outdoor.
and
club.
that became the Outdoor Country Club. The Outdoor Country Club then sold it to York College, and that's where we sit. His he greeted a number of very interesting people on this estate, including Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, Davy Crockett, and they did not get along with Davy Crockett. There are some side stories to that one. And most interestingly, James Buchanan, who he was very good friends with. And he lived on East Market Street and built the whole Springdale estates. Why was it named Springdale? This is real easy. He wasn't very creative. Still today, there are a bunch of springs all along Springettsbury Avenue, including one right under St. Paul's Church. And I can attest to this because I have been there. They have two huge sump pumps down there to pump out this water from this old spring. So it doesn't flood the basement of the church, which I have seen the effects and have seen the water in the basement. So, and then there was a field where his golf course was, and therefore Springdale. His grandson was Jacob Hirsch. We have a Hirsch Avenue or Hirsch Alley in York, and that was all named from him. He was a successful banker, and he inherited the entire estate. He died in 1941, and the estate was bought by a man named, and I had it on my other paper, and I don't see it here. Oh, here it is, Charles Pechenik. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Window blind factory in Dallastown.
Charles,
Jewish gentleman from Long Island or somewhere thereabouts.
what did Charles Pechenik use this beautiful 40-room mansion for? And if any of you were here before 1955 on South George Street, it dominated the entire south of the city. What did he use the mansion for?
Storage,
Bingo, you are hot tonight. He used it for storage, and he redid the carriage house, which is where I was doing this talk earlier, and lived in the carriage house. He stored stuff in the house. The roof started leaking. He had paint falling off the walls. Guess what he did? Absolutely nothing. He let the house deteriorate, deferred maintenance to the point where it was beyond repair, and he tore it down.
I think Benjamin Latrobe was the architect.
Yes, the house was very historic. The sunken gardens are still there. You can go out. They used to have an old labyrinth, you know, the labyrinths where you would put the hedges in and you had to walk through and get to and then you try and get to the middle. The church has put a labyrinth in there. He sold it to York Hospital. York Hospital modified the carriage house, which still pretty much exists today the way they did it. They would not let them expand into the city because of the neighborhood association. So they sold it to the church, and I'm trying to think of the name of the church, Unitarian Church is there now. They're doing a pretty good job maintaining the property. You can still see some of the old trees that were in the sunken garden and some of the rest of the property. There are many parts still there that existed, but that is kind of the story of the Barnetts, the Hirsches, and thank you very much. Oh, well, there's a connection for you then.
Got Erica here, I guess she's the last one.
You know, you hear, for instance, Emily Dickinson, that scholars will say, well, one of these days we're going to find somebody's going to have letters in the attic from Emily Dickinson. Well, in my case, I'm always snooping around eBay because I found some really cool things there. And in the fall, I was looking one time and I saw that somebody had, you need to put your search things in. So mine are either Hopewell Township or Crossroads or Rhineley or something like that. And something came up about these envelopes that had Rhineley cancellations on them. And so I thought, well, okay, let's try it. And they had one letter on there. So I got them. There were 12 of them, and 11 of them, it turned out, had little letters in them. And they were all to one person, a teenager, Mary Thompson, who happened to be living on Pine Street. Her father was a teacher in York, but they were from Hopewell Township. And all these people were writing to her. And one of the people, it turned out, was a Millie Logan, who was from Crossroads. And if you know anything about that area, there was a very famous man, well, he was postmaster at Crossroads, or a little earlier, for like 60 years, and one of the longest in history, so to speak. And John Logan had a son, William Sampson Logan, who lived in Crossroads and had a store. And he was married to a woman who was a Douglas, and Douglases are in my line. And so this woman turned out to be one of my distant cousins back yonder. So this letter was written by Minnie. And one of the things that I enjoy a lot with genealogy is just the stories. I want to get to know who the people were, even if they lived, what kind of indications can you find? So anyway, this one I found really beguiling because it's just, there's some misspelling. She was 12 years old, but just some of the things that come out. So I'm going to read it quickly. So this was March the 9th, 1882. Dear cousin, so she's writing to Mary. As it is raining and I didn't go to school today, I thought I would drop you a few lines to let you know that we are all well at present, hoping when these few lines reach you, they may find you the same. I received your kind and welcome letter and was glad to hear from you all. Mary, I must let you know, Aunt Kate had a party on Tuesday night. Me and Tilly and Aunt Matt was there. We didn't get home until 4 o'clock the next morning. We had a nice time. Uncle John and Aunt Kate danced, and Uncle Jim and Emma was there. There was 23 girls, and I didn't count the boys. Reba is well and can stand now. It is the first time I saw her since we had whooping cough. Aunt Kate is coming up next week. Len Douglas' wife is sick, and she was not expected to live yesterday evening. We haven't heard from her today. She had the cramp colic. The doctor said she couldn't live long if she didn't get better soon. My great-grandfather had a brother, Lem, and so this was information about his wife, and she did survive the cramp colic. Emma is in York. She went on Sunday evening with Will Talbot and Sally. Her sister, Carrie Earhart, is dead. She died on the 6th and was buried on the 8th. She had jaundice. We don't know when Emma will be home. She's going to stay with us this summer. You wanted to know what Aunt Sally called her baby. Well, she called him Sammy Logan Trout. To Sammy, that Nudie, tell Sammy, this must be another Sammy, that Nudie was pleased with his bird and sends this picture to him. Mother said to tell you she won't be up till May. Then she is coming on Saturday and stay over Sunday. Me and Tilly will come up with Pop sometime as soon as the weather gets nice and stay with you one night. Then we will have a nice time. I was over at your place one day with Rosie Trout. She was at our place. So I think there may be part of the family, the Thompson family, that's still in Hopewell Township. At our place overnight and wanted to see Mrs. King. Mary, I must tell you that Miss Buckingham gets married today. That little humpy-backed one, Isabella from Delta. Mother says she is going on church to church on Sunday to see them make their appearance. There has been any amount of parties this winter down here. I expect you heard about John Anderson having that big dancing party, and I expect they will turn him out of the church. Well, and I must tell you, Dan Brenneman has a younger sister about 6 weeks old. Jack has been here this good while. I can't tell you where he is if he ain't at home with you. We fed him, and I don't know if this is an animal or what it is, or if it's a person. We fed him when he was here. You wanted to get to know how it is getting along at school. Well, we haven't been there very regular on account of so much wet weather. But I like to go very well to our school. We'll be out on Saturday. Week is expected. Miss Nettie and Dr. Will be married as he is hot after her. I want you and Alice to come down sometime with Pat. And Alice is Mary's sister. And don't wait on us coming up, and stay till he goes up again. We will take you to your grandpa's and down to Aunt Kate's and all around. I will have to bring my letter to a close for this time and say like you did. If you can't read it, bring it down, and maybe I can write soon, and don't wait as long as I did. I would have wrote sooner if Pap hadn't been up and we heard from you, hoping to hear from you soon. I remain as ever your affectionate cousin, Minnie J. Logan. So it was very interesting. I know just enough about the family and some photographs that I have, just to go through this and recognize, oh, that's that person and that's that person. So just a real joy. Okay.
How old was she have been when she wrote that?
12.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
We can get that from a 12-year-old today.
Anyone else have anything they wish to present? If not, don't forget about the pie that I mentioned to begin with. And if anyone has any questions for anyone here, if we can give any assistance, let us know. Thank you.
And the meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.